Welcome to the Gentleman Gunner, the channel where high performance shooting is celebrated and FUD splits are ignored. Now, what prompted me to tell you about this story is I'm on my 5th platform switch, which I'm coming from a Shadow 2 Compact to now a Beretta PX4 Storm. And I'm going through this process, but now this being the 5th time, it's not as frustrating as it's been with the others because I've developed a small process to help me understand about where I'm at with things and what to look for. And I'm gonna share that with you guys. And if you are not familiar with me as a competitor, I'm a multi-division master in IDPA and an A-class in carry optics and limited optics for USPSA, so I've got some time behind that along with 400 plus matches, so I've seen quite a bit. Now let's start with what to pay attention for. This is going to be assuming that you've already picked a division and you're going to get right to work with going the direction you want to go. So let's pay attention to our platform type, meaning the action. So is it going to be double action, single action, striker fired, or single action only? Because the start condition I've learned is the biggest inhibitor of when you are learning a new platform and can lead to a lot of frustration, especially if you're going from striker fire to double action, single action as an example. Now we want to elaborate on the start condition. For every division a striker fired firearm is in, you pretty much can just load it around and get to work. Now, if you have a defeatable safety of some sort, such as a single action only, such as a 1911-2011, you're gonna have to have that safety engaged before you can begin your course of fire. Now, double action, single action is more of a loose rule for some divisions. Now, there are some guns like my PX4 where its only option is to decock it to double action. So if you are on that, learning that trigger characteristic is going to be huge. And I will tell you, double action, single action has the biggest learning curve, but is arguably the most rewarding. Kind of like learning a manual transmission and taking it to the next step, and especially for you racers out there, when you nail your first heel toe downshift, that's what it's like to shoot double action with precision. Next thing is weight and size. Now, weight plays a much bigger factor than I had thought, and that really stuck out to me when I went from a heavy 2011, which was about 57 ounces, to a lightweight Shadow 2 Compact at 30 ounces for a competition weight. So swinging that gun around, manipulating it, was on a completely different level. And the size as well, because think about this from the IDPA side of it. If you're looking to conceal it, well, trying to conceal a full 5-inch 2011 versus a much smaller Shadow 2 Compact is a little easier. So maybe doing appendix carry to keep it in line with your EDC may be more of your flavor, or you may have to think about larger concealment for that larger gun. And the next point is a big one, grip size. So the first thing you're going to want to see is where do your hands naturally land with that firearm? Now for me, on striker fires and as well as some of my double action, single action guns, my hands tend to sit a little bit higher and I like a very high grip on the gun. And there have been cases, particularly when I briefly went on the AO1 where I tried the Grafel type grip. Now, the one grip that was an incredibly big challenge for me to learn was the 2011 platform because my palms had a tendency to bump the safety quite a bit. And essentially what I had to do is make my support hand a little more upright and push it forward. So you'll see that there's actually space in there, and how I mitigated a lot of muzzle rise was actually engaging my strong hand more by utilizing my thumb to press down on the thumb safeties. And funny enough though, the one oddball and a lot of you are probably aware of is Glocks. Every time I go from almost every gun out there to a Glock, my aim tends to be a little bit high when I jump on the Glock, but just pay attention to that if you're going that direction, and vice versa. If you're going from Glock to anything else, you're probably gonna point low at first. Sighting system is a big one as well. You're gonna have to decide you're gonna do red dots or irons, and if you have a learning curve to deal with on your own there. And this is a big one for me because it's been a challenge, particularly with the PX4 recently, was learning your magazines. Now, if you're running these 140mm ones like we like to run in USPSA, they tend to have custom springs and followers as well as base pads. And they may not exactly jive at first with it. So you're gonna have to play around and experiment with that until that may get right. Now, a lot of times they do design these things to work, but there typically can be a break-in period and you should pay attention to that. Now, additionally, you're gonna wanna know where full is. You can look at the back of these holes, but Is that really accurate? And after some time, you'll be able to pick up little subtleties. Like for me, I look on the backside of between the magazine tube and base pad, and I can see the stacking in there. And for me, that's a visual cue to say, not only is it full, but it particularly has either 24 or 23 rounds. All right, so now let's jump into how to practice. Now, the first thing I've always started with is dry fire. I still till this day will dry fire my fundamentals 5 days a week, which means my draw, my reloads, and my transitions. And what you're looking for is to see where you're indexing it. When you get this gun on target, is it getting to a spot naturally? You're gonna wanna put some time on that, and particularly the more time you get in that to program your biomedical computer, the better. Now in dry fire, this is a good time to understand your gun's particular characteristics. Striker fire is pretty straight to the point, and you'll want to take time to rack that and feel the initial prep in that. So that could be either a wall or, like Glocks, have a rolling break to that, but it's important to get used to finding that wall. Now single action, such as this 226, okay, so I've got it racked back, hammers back, empty of course, and we're gonna put that safety on. What you wanna think about in dry fire is when you go to present this gun, okay? So you draw and disengage the safety. Now double action, single action, such as this PX4 here, this is gonna take some time, but the beautiful thing about most double action guns is they do reset in double action, such as you see there. And when you present, the idea is to keep either your dot or front sight stable. Now, transitions and manipulation are going to be a big thing you get used to. This is also where you start to develop your grip as well. So once you find that ideal grip, transitions to you shouldn't see any type of hiccup once you are at speed. The other thing too is reloads, because I can tell you these two guns I have on the table have different angles when you go to pull them in, such as this 226. I have this big beautiful mag well here, which gives me a little bit more freedom, but the mags themselves are a little skinny, so I have to be a little bit more deliberate when I guide it in and go. And you're gonna wanna get into doing movement with these as quick as possible, because in this type of shooting, we shoot dynamically, so don't get comfortable doing things static. Now let's talk about live fire. At this point, you've put some time into dry fire. Now we're gonna put some live rounds behind it. And the thing you're gonna be doing more so in the beginning of live fire is validating everything that you've already been doing in dry fire. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do here is the 3-2 drill. Now, your goal isn't to see how fast you can go right out of the gate. This is about feel. And when I do this drill, I'm looking for great sights and about as tight of a group as I can get. And that's going to tell me a lot of things: how the gun's tracking, how my grip is, and my trigger prep. So here I have a USPSA target about 10 yards away. And this first set and go around, I'm just going to draw to it, and I'm going to give it 3 of the body, 2 of the head. But these are going to be very controlled shots. I'm going to see all my sights on these. And I'll time it for fun here, just to give you a benchmark here to think about. Okay, and as you see, we'll just walk right up to here, and that was a good solid cadence. And what I'm trying to do is just get a good feel for it. I had kind of an awkward draw, but as you'll see, it doesn't take much to really feel it out. Now this is the thing, because I'm running double action, this is what it tells me that, hey, I need to work at that a little better. Let's see if I can pick up the speed. Okay. And this is part of testing and tuning, because I just went for it on this, and the hits are a little bit all over the place, but I was a second faster at 276, as you'll see there. And as you see, I went for it, but this was a result of a bad grip, and then I just kind of went back to here on my reset. So you want to think about that and start to adjust accordingly. And one thing I love about that drill too is that it helps develop that muscle memory. So when you complement this back and forth with dry fire, you're getting that muscle memory dialed in. Once you know what it feels like in live fire, you can go back to dry fire and continue to apply that same amount of pressure. Now, if you watch my channel, you'll look downrange and see this is a familiar setup. This is a designated transition drill. And so I'll start at this steel right here, and then transition to the 20, back to steel, to the 15, back to steel, and a 10. So it's a nice wide transition.
and back to steel to finish. So it's a 10-round course of fire. Now, what I'm looking for when I'm learning my platform is how this gun swings. Now, I'm actually gonna kind of treat it slow and see if I can get some good solid hits out of this. And so that's the idea, is just get yourself in a nice settled cadence. I did swing at this a little hard, but hey, not a bad group, right? And I ideally want to keep the groups nice and tight. Now, I swung off on this. This is what happens when you're a little impatient. So this was my first shot. This was my second, because I was so excited to go back to steel that I basically almost had a delta. But the thing is, as you start to clean this up, you'll learn that you can increase the speed and maybe pick up a Charlie here and there. That's kind of the beauty of doing this.
And with time, you'll see that you're able to easily build speed, and as well as your eyes and your body's going to get used to seeing what it has to in the sights to execute well. The third, and of course the most important component, is matches. Now, the first couple of matches are most likely going to be dumpster fires. Just prepare yourself for that in advance and don't set your standards too high, because at this point you are just coloring within the lines of everything you've hopefully been already doing. So you're seeing your sights well, you're getting your hits. And the thing I want to mention right off the bat is, once you are done shooting, try your best to go and see the targets up close to see where those hits landed, because that's going to validate your ability to call shots with your new platform.
Oh, I should have actually tried this. I actually hit everything.
Yeah, I don't know why.
I called the mic on that guy, and I was like, ah.
No.
Now, this is going to sound contradicting to the first portion of this, which is you've got to have 2 to 3 matches where you just absolutely push it to the absolute limit. And I mean, you are pulling the trigger and yanking and going from position as hard as you can, because you want to explore the limits. And that is going to set the tone of where really slow and accurate is versus, oh my gosh, this is where the wheels fall off, and you're gonna work somewhere in between to get better. Now let's go into what the actual learning curve is in terms of rounds, what you can expect. And I've labeled this out into about 5 stages. Now bear in mind, some of you may do it with less rounds or more rounds. It's all in between, but this is just to give you something to look forward to. Now in stage 1, it's about 1,000 rounds or so, and you're just getting used to your firearm. You can expect about a 10 to upwards of 25% dip in your match performance right off the bat. And you're gonna find very quickly that the wheels come off real easy, which is why I said prepare yourself for this and try your best to color within the lines in this period. Now, stage 2, I like to call 80% speed. Now, what I define 80% is I'm gonna go as quick as I can seeing perfect sights. And you're here for about 1,000 to 3,000 rounds, and this is why I said think about coloring within those lines, because now you can transition to target and pull that trigger with ease, and it's starting to feel very predictable to you. Now, stage 3 is about 3,000 to 5,000 rounds and about 5 matches as well. This is where you're starting to come back to your baseline of where your competitive speed was. And you are acutely aware of where your limits lie with this gun at that time, and you're confident that you can at least go through a match with, you know, only maybe 1 dumpster fire of a stage. But for the most part, you're not necessarily worried about how you're gonna do your reloads or anything like this. You should be comfortable with your magazine setup, manipulation, everything at this point. Now, stage 4, I like to label this one as confidence. This is about 5,000 rounds and 10 matches. The stages, the targets, the conditions no longer matter to you, because this firearm is now a part of your routine, and you're not thinking about anything other than, hey, I'm just gonna shoot this stage well. And everything is going to feel like it is subconscious. So things are just gonna happen where you're like, okay, looked at that target, fired off 2 hammer pair, and I knew I got 2 alpha because I am that confident in this platform. As well as coming back to memorization of your stages and landing at those precise spots with ease. It's all gonna feel subconscious. You're not thinking about your trigger prep, your grip pressure, nothing at this point. Now, stage 5 5 I call the growth stage. This is about 10,000 rounds or at least 3 major matches. Now, I understand not everybody here is going to want to do major matches, but it is a different mindset and tempo versus your local match mentality. And if you're not going to do that, here's what I want you to get out of this. Your on-demand performance, that means dead cold, that you can show up to a match and shoot right away, is dialed in. So there is no hesitation in anything. And so it's up to you to decide how you want to get better as a shooter, and not in any way the equipment at this point, unless you have a mechanical failure. And this leads into my final tip for you guys, which is practice with hotter or snappier ammo, because the exaggeration you get and the impulse feeding back into you is going to program your body and mind to be prepared for that. And I kid you not, every time I've practiced with hotter ammo, whether that's Blazer 115 and went as soft as Syntech 150, when I go to do the match with Syntech 150, it's just like effortless for me to do it. It's kind of like training with ankle weights on like we used to do in basketball, and I know that's kind of looked down on now. But when we take those ankle weights off, dunking became a little bit easier back then. Now, that's all I have for you guys on this. Really think about all this, because it's a lot more in detail, and there's a difference between knowing how to shoot your gun and being absolutely competitive with it. And remember this, guys, do not buy the gun you love shooting, buy the gun that makes you love shooting. And until next time, we will see you all at the range.